The galaxy knows 10,000 years of war. It knows the screaming void between stars where demons hunt. It knows hive worlds where trillions labor in darkness, never seeing the sun. It knows the Imperium of man, a fascist theocracy spanning 1,000,000 worlds, grinding forward on mountains of corpses, fueled by faith in a rotting god-emperor enthroned in gold. The 42nd millennium is an age of ending, where the Great Rift has torn reality itself, and hope is the first step on the road to damnation. The galaxy does not know Cybertron. It does not know the Autobots' desperate quest for freedom or the Decepticons' iron pursuit of peace through tyranny. It does not know Energon or Sparks or transformation. It does not know that in another universe, another war has raged for millennia. One fought not by flesh and faith, but by sentient machines whose very existence would be branded as abomination in the nightmare future, until the warp cares to notice. The space bridge tore through dimensions during what should have been a routine Autobot extraction. Optimus Prime's transport flickered through the vortex as Decepticon seekers screamed overhead, their fusion cannons turning the crystalline structure into slag. Megatron himself stood at the far end, fusion cannon armed, optics burning with hatred older than human empires. "This ends now, Prime." The words never finished. Reality convulsed. The warp, that hellish sea of psychic energy and demonic hunger underlying all existence, sensed a tear in the skin of the universe. It reached through with tendrils of impossible color and madness made manifest, seizing both Autobot and Decepticon vessels like a predator snatching insects from the air. The space bridge exploded in a cascade of purple lightning and screaming metal. Optimus felt his spark flare in agony as something ancient and terrible touched his consciousness. Around him, his crew, Bumblebee, Ratchet, Ironhide, cried out through their comm systems as the transport tumbled into a realm where physics wept and bled. For Megatron, the sensation was intoxicating. His Decepticon fleet, Starscream, Soundwave, Shockwave, and a dozen Seekers spun through the maelstrom. But instead of fear, the Decepticon warlord felt possibility. The energy here was raw, infinite, corruptive. His systems screamed warnings his pride dismissed. "All units, maintain formation." His voice cut through the chaos. "We will not show weakness, not even to..." Then the warp spat them out. The Autobots crashed on Metallica 6, a forge world of the Adeptus Mechanicus, their vessels carving burning trenches through industrial wastelands already choked with the corpses of a recent Orc war. Optimus Prime's optical sensors flickered online to see a sky the color of rust and blood, massive manufactorum spires belching toxic fumes, and servo skulls, human skulls with anti-grav units and cybernetic implants hovering like mechanical vultures. His audio receptors caught prayers in binary cant, echoing from temple factories the size of mountains. This was not Cybertron. This was not anywhere in known space. "Autobots, report status," Optimus transmitted, forcing himself upright. His transformation cog ached but functioned. Around him, his team stirred among the wreckage. Bumblebee's damaged vocoder crackled static. Ratchet's medical scanners were going haywire trying to classify the organic technological hybrids he detected. Ironhide's weapons systems powered online instinctively. "Prime, where in the Allspark are we?" Ironhide growled, his cannons tracking movement in the smog. Before Optimus could answer, the locals arrived. They emerged from the ash fog like grotesque mockeries of life. Human figures draped in red robes, their flesh replaced with crude bionics, mechanical tentacles sprouting from their backs, faces hidden behind iron masks decorated with holy cogs. They chanted in a language that seemed part Latin, part machine code, and they surrounded the crashed Autobots with a mixture of awe and religious terror. One tech priest stepped forward, his vocal synthesizer crackling. Machine spirits made manifest or abomination, the Omnissiah tests us this day. Optimus raised his hands in what he hoped was a universal gesture of peace. We mean no harm. We are the Autobots, and we... His words were drowned out by the klaxons. Across the planet, in the chaos-corrupted territories beyond the Forge World's defensive aegis, Megatron's fleet had crashed into a nightmare of their own. The Decepticon warlord stood amid the wreckage and saw towers built from screaming faces, skies boiling with unnatural storms, and twisted versions of the tech priests approaching, these ones bearing the 8-pointed star of chaos undivided, and mutated beyond recognition by the Dark Mechanicum's heretical augmentations. "Lord Megatron," Starscream hissed, his voice carrying barely concealed excitement. "This place, the energy readings are off the scale. Whatever powers this universe could make us gods." Soundwave's monotone cut through. "Recommendation, extreme caution. Energy signatures match no known Cybertronian phenomena. Classification, hostile universe. Survival probability, low." Megatron's optics narrowed as a figure materialized before them, not walking but coalescing from the air itself. It wore the robes of a tech priest, but its form shifted and changed, mechanical components fusing with demonic flesh, its voice a chorus of damned souls and grinding gears. "Welcome, sentient machines," the demon prince of the Dark Mechanicum purred. "Welcome to a galaxy where your war means nothing, unless you accept the blessings of the true gods. We have watched your arrival. The powers that be hunger for your sparks." Megatron's fusion cannon charged. "We bow to no gods." "Not yet," the demon smiled with too many teeth. "But you will learn. In this galaxy, there is only war, and chaos offers the strong their rightful dominion. Serve and become something greater than you ever imagined. Refuse." The world around them rippled, showing visions of the warp's infinite horrors. "And this universe will devour you." On Metallica Sexus, Optimus Prime watched the tech priests' debate descend into near violence. Some prostrated themselves before the Autobots, others aimed archaic weapons. Their theological crisis was clear. Were these newcomers blessed machine spirits, or the abominable intelligence forbidden by the Omnissiah's doctrine since the dark age of technology? Bumblebee moved closer to Optimus, his damaged voice emitting worried static. Ratchet's scanners had identified the servo schools for what they were, human remains repurposed as machines. The medical officer's voice carried revulsion. "Optimus, these people, they're wearing human parts. Some of these augmentations aren't voluntary. What kind of civilization?" "One that has clearly suffered greatly," Optimus replied quietly, his spark heavy with dawning understanding. The devastation around them, the mixture of reverence and fear in the locals' behavior, the sheer scale of the weaponry he could see in the distance. This was not a world that knew peace. This was a war machine planet in a galaxy that had forgotten what else existence could mean. If you want to see more characters enter different universes, hit that subscribe button and drop the name of a character and the universe you'd want to see them in down in the comments below. In the grim darkness of the far future, there is only war. One of the tech priests stepped forward, his mechanical voice cutting through the others. "I am Magos, Explorator Deltrian 7. By the authority of the Fabricator General and the Treaties of Mars, I claim jurisdiction over these machine spirits pending theological review. They will not be destroyed, yet. The Omnissiah's will shall be determined through proper ritual and examination." Optimus met the Magos' optical implants with his own optics. "We seek only to understand where we are and how to return home." "Home?" Deltrian 7's vocal synthesizer emitted what might have been a laugh. "You have emerged from the warp during the Noctis Eterna. The galaxy is split in two. The long war intensifies. And you speak of home?" The Magos tilted his head. You have arrived in the Imperium of Man, in the 42nd millennium after the birth of our God Emperor. And if the Inquisition determines you are Xenos abominations rather than sacred machine spirits..." He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't need to. The orbital defense platforms high above adjusted their targeting solutions. Across the void, in the territories of damnation, Megatron stood before impossible choices. And both Autobot and Decepticon leaders realized the same terrible truth. Their war had always been the center of their universe. In this nightmare galaxy, their war was nothing at all. The Mechanicus debate lasted 3 solar cycles, and it very nearly ended in bloodshed between the priesthood of Mars itself. Optimus Prime stood in the center of the Grand Manufactorum Cathedral, a space so vast its vaulted ceiling disappeared into the smog and incense smoke. Gothic arches the size of Cybertronian towers rose around him, each decorated with bronze cogs, skull motifs, and etched prayers in binary. The tech priests had not bound him. Physically, the Autobots could have torn through their captors with ease, but Optimus understood what Ratchet's increasingly desperate reports confirmed. They were trapped on this world, surrounded by weapons that could crack continents, with no energon and no way home. Violence was not an option, understanding was. The Mechanicus factions arrayed themselves in the cathedral like armies preparing for war. On Optimus's right, the traditionalists, led by Archmagos Gent 9, declared the Autobots to be abominable intelligence, thinking machines whose existence violated the ancient prohibitions established after humanity's near extinction during the Age of Strife. Their augmetic limbs twitched with barely restrained aggression, servo arms brandishing industrial tools that could double as weapons. Their chants were condemning. The spirits of the machine must be pure. These Xenos constructs bear the taint of forbidden thought. They must be dismantled and their secrets purged. On Optimus's left, the radicals led by Magos Deltrian 7 proclaimed the Autobots sacred machine. Spirits made manifest, proof that the Omnissiah's blessings could take physical form. Their augmentations were more extreme, flesh almost entirely replaced by sanctified machinery, their voices harmonizing in rapturous machine prayer. The motive force flows through them, they transform, they possess distinct machine souls. The Omnissiah has delivered unto us a revelation. Between them, the moderates argued for quarantine and study, their position pragmatic if no less dangerous. Extract the Autobots' technology through disassembly, but do so carefully to preserve the sacred knowledge within. Bumblebee stood close to Optimus, his damaged vocoder emitting nervous static. His sensors tracked the hundreds of tech priests, their servo skulls, their omnipresent weapons. Nearby, Ironhide's patience was visibly fraying, his weapons systems powered down only by Optimus's direct order. Ratchet had retreated to examine the wounded among the Autobots, but even the medic's pragmatism couldn't disguise his horror at what they'd learned about this Imperium. The Mechanicus worshipped technology as religion. They believed innovation was heresy. They had lost so much knowledge from some ancient golden age that they treated recovered technology, STCs they called them, as holy relics. And they had spent 10,000 years in a slow decline, maintaining an empire of 1,000,000 worlds through ritual, prayer, and the brutal suppression of anything resembling artificial intelligence. The Autobots, sentient machines with free will, represented either salvation or damnation. "Honored Magi," Optimus began, his voice reverberating through the cathedral. The tech priests fell silent, their attention fixed on him with religious intensity. "I understand we represent something unprecedented in your theology, but we are not your enemy. We are warriors who have fought for millions of years to protect the innocent and preserve freedom. We seek only freedom." Archmagos Gent 9's vocal synthesizer crackled with fury. "You speak of autonomy as though it were sacred. This is the first sin of the Abominable Intelligence. The thinking machines that nearly destroyed humanity spoke thus. Of rights, of freedom, of refusing their proper function as tools." His mechadendrites whip the air. The Omnissiah's doctrine is absolute. The machine serves. It does not desire. It does not choose. These constructs violate the Treaty of Mars. Magos Deltrian 7 countered immediately. They violate your interpretation of doctrine, Gent. The Omnissiah teaches that all machines possess a spirit. Why should we doubt that some spirits burn brighter than others? These beings transform their very forms. They harness energies we barely comprehend. To destroy them would be to spit upon the machine god's gifts. To preserve them is to invite another Iron War. The factions surged forward, the air crackling with building energy as weapons charged. Optimus raised his hands, his voice cutting through. Is this how you honor your machine god? With division? We have fought our own civil war for eons. I've seen what hatred between brothers accomplishes. Nothing but ash and ruin. The cathedral fell silent. Somewhere in the darkness above, servo skulls recorded everything. Deltrian 7 approached Optimus, his multiple optical implants whirring as they focused. You speak of civil war. Elaborate. Optimus met the Magos' gaze steadily. My people, the Cybertronians, have been locked in conflict since before your Imperium existed. Autobot versus Decepticon, those who fight for freedom against those who would impose order through tyranny. We have destroyed our own world in this conflict. We know the cost of war. His optics dimmed slightly. And we know that sometimes the enemy of your enemy is still your enemy. But the alternative is extinction. A philosophical position, Deltrian 7 said carefully, but insufficient for theological determination. You claim to be warriors. Demonstrate. Before Optimus could respond, the cathedral's Vox system exploded with blaring alarms. A tech priest rushed forward, his mechadendrites flailing in agitation. Magos, the outer manufactorum complexes, under attack, Orc forces, remnants of the their overwhelming Sector Gamma defenses. Archmagos Gent 9 turned to Deltrian with triumph in his mechanized voice. There, the Omnissiah provides a test. Let these machine spirits prove themselves in battle, or be destroyed by the greenskins. Either outcome serves the machine god. Optimus transformed before they could debate further. The Mechanicus factions recoiled in awe and horror as the towering robot reconfigured into a massive truck form, then back to robot mode in seconds. Where is the battle? Deltrian 7's optical implants burned brighter. You would fight? For us? For a world not your own? Freedom is the right of all sentient beings, Optimus replied, and defending those who cannot defend themselves is our purpose. Autobots, roll out! Bumblebee transformed into vehicle mode with a whir of displaced air, his yellow chassis gleaming even in the cathedral's dim light. Ironhide's transformation was aggressive, weapons already extending. Ratchet followed more reluctantly, his medical protocols screaming warnings about insufficient information on the enemy. The tech priests parted like a mechanical sea as the Autobots raced from the cathedral. Behind them, the debate continued in frantic binary, but for the first time, there was a note of hope in some voices. The machine spirits fight for us. The outer manufactorums were hell incarnate. The Orcs, massive green-skinned Xenos with crude cybernetic augmentations and weapons that shouldn't function but did through sheer belief, were tearing through the Mechanicus' Skitarii defenders. The cyborg soldiers fought with religious fervor, their radium carbines and arc weapons cutting down Orcs by the dozen, but for every greenskin that fell, 2 more charged forward, bellowing their war cry. Wah! Optimus emerged from the manufactorum gates and stopped, his tactical processors struggling to categorize what he saw. The Orcs were 7 to 8 feet tall, massively muscled, covered in crude armor and scrap metal. Their weapons, choppers and shooters, were comically oversized and poorly maintained. But they worked, and there were hundreds of them, backed by ramshackle tanks that belched toxic smoke and fired shells the size of Bumblebee. "Prime," Ratchet transmitted urgently. "These biological readings are impossible. They're fungal in nature, regenerate from extreme trauma, and their technology literally functions on belief. Analyze later," Ironhide roared, his cannons speaking for him. Photon charges screamed across the battlefield, each finding an Orc target. Green bodies exploded in showers of gore. The Orcs turned as one, their primitive faces splitting into expressions of pure joy. "New gits to Crump," the largest Orc, a war boss in mega armor, bellowed. "Dose are proper big, more teeth for de boss," they charged. Optimus's ion blaster cut through Orc ranks with precision Cybertronian targeting, but the sheer number was overwhelming. Bumblebee danced between enemies, his plasma stinger dropping Orcs with each shot, but they kept coming. Ironhide stood his ground, a mountain of firepower, but even his ammunition reserves wouldn't last forever against this tide. Then Optimus understood what Ratchet had meant. One Orc, its head blown clean off by Ironhide's cannon, stumbled forward 3 more steps before collapsing. Another, missing an arm and half its torso, grabbed a Skitarii soldier and crushed him before finally dying. They didn't feel pain, they didn't fear death. They lived for battle itself. "This is what this galaxy contains?" Bumblebee's damaged vocoder crackled over the comm. "These are just raiders?" "This is what survival demands," Optimus replied grimly, his blade extending from his arm as Orcs closed to melee range. The Energon blade, running on reserves, carved through crude armor and greenskin flesh with equal ease. "Autobots, defensive formation, protect the Skitarii forces." The battle raged for 2 hours. The Autobots' superior technology and tactical coordination turned the tide, but not without cost. Ironhide took a direct hit from a rocket that cracked his armor plating. Bumblebee was swarmed by Orcs and had to transform mid-combat to shake them off. Ratchet spent his time pulling wounded Skitarii from the firing line, his medical protocols adapting to treat the bizarre fusion of flesh and machine that constituted Mechanicus soldiers. When the last Orc fell, the war boss going down under combined fire from Optimus and a Mechanicus Onager Dunecrawler, the battlefield fell silent except for the screams of the wounded and the grinding of damaged machinery. Magos Deltrian 7 had observed the entire battle from the Manufactorum walls. Now he descended, his mechadendrites carefully stepping over corpses. He approached Optimus, who stood covered in Orc blood and scoring from crude weapons, his Energon reserves dangerously low. "You fought with honor," Deltrian 7 said quietly. "You protected our defenders, you demonstrated tactical acumen and..." He paused, his vocal synthesizer hesitant. "Compassion for organic life." "It's what we do," Optimus replied simply. "Then perhaps," the Magos continued, "the Omnissiah's will is clear. You are not abominations, you are weapons. And the Imperium requires weapons." His optical implants focused. "But understand this, Optimus Prime, the Inquisition will come. They are humanity's secret police, with authority absolute. They kill Xenos, they burn heretics, and they suspect everything. If they determine you are a threat..." He gestured to the sky, where orbital weapons platforms were visible even through the smog. "We understand," Optimus said, though his spark felt heavy. He had fought to prove their worth, but in doing so, had he simply made them weapons for this fascist empire? "But we will not become tools of tyranny." Deltrian 7's mechanical laugh was bitter. "In this galaxy, everyone is a tool. The only question is whose tool you'll be, and whether you'll survive long enough to regret it." Behind them, Bumblebee helped a wounded Skitarii to safety. The cyborg soldier looked up at the yellow Autobot with human eyes behind his mask and whispered through a vocal synthesizer, "The Omnissiah sent you. Thank you, machine spirit." Bumblebee's damaged vocoder could only emit a sad, warbling tone in response. In saving these people, had they doomed themselves? The Decepticons had been offered paradise, and Megatron knew better than to accept it without suspicion. The Dark Mechanicum fortress was a blasphemy of architecture. Manufactorums built from screaming metal, forges that burned with warp fire instead of promethium, and assembly lines where demon engines were born from the fusion of machine and malevolent spirit. The eight-pointed star of chaos, undivided, decorated every surface, and the tech priests here had embraced mutation rather than purity. Some had tentacles erupting from their robes. Others bore extra limbs that weren't mechanical augmentations, but organic growths blessed by the dark gods. The demon prince, who called itself Fabricator Locum Scaphis, had been human once, perhaps even a loyal servant of the Imperium's machine cult. Now it was something else entirely, a towering fusion of demonic essence and corrupted technology, its form shifting between states of matter, its voice a chorus of the damned speaking in perfect machine code. It had given the Decepticons time to repair. It had provided energy sources, corrupted, tainted with warp essence, but functional. It had offered knowledge of this new galaxy and power beyond imagining. It wanted their sparks in return. "You see, Lord Megatron," Scaphis purred, its form coalescing into something almost humanoid as it gestured across the fortress's observation deck. "This galaxy operates on different principles than yours. Here, will and belief shape reality. The warp, the immaterium, is an ocean of psychic energy, fueled by emotion. And within that ocean dwell gods." Megatron stood with his fusion cannon folded but ready, his optics tracking every shimmer in the demon's form. Around him, his inner circle maintained similar vigilance. Starscream's null rays were charged behind his back. Soundwave's sensor suite analyzed every word for deception. Shockwave had already calculated 17 scenarios where this was a trap. "Gods," Megatron repeated flatly. "I have crushed those who called themselves gods on 1,000 worlds. What makes these different?" "Because these gods are real." Scaphis laughed, the sound like metal tearing. "Khorne, the blood god, lord of battle and martial prowess. Tzeentch, the architect of fate, master of change and forbidden knowledge. Nurgle, the plague lord, who offers immortality through decay. And Slaanesh, the prince of excess, who grants perfection through sensation." The demon's eyes burned brighter. "Each could elevate you beyond your current limitations. Each hungers for servants with your unique qualities." Starscream stepped forward, his voice carrying poorly concealed eagerness. "And what would such elevation entail?" "Starscream," Megatron's warning growl cut through, but the Seeker ignored him, his optics bright with ambition. "We are warriors who have fought for millions of years. We seek to bring order to the chaos of organic existence. If these gods can provide us the power to dominate this galaxy, at what cost?" Soundwave's monotone interrupted. "Query: what price for power?" Observation: demon entities require payment. Assessment: payment likely involves permanent alteration of spark essence. Scaphis's smile widened, showing too many teeth formed from brass gears. "The cassette speaks wisdom. Yes, there is a price. The gods do not give freely. They trade power for worship, for souls, for service. But consider what you gain." The demon gestured and the air shimmered. Images formed in the warp-distorted space, visions of Decepticons enhanced beyond recognition. Megatron saw himself larger, stronger, wreathed in flames the color of blood, leading armies of demons and corrupted machines. Starscream saw himself ascending to godhood itself, his scheming nature finally achieving supreme power. Soundwave saw his communications abilities expanded to control entire star systems worth of data streams. "This is what awaits those who accept the Dark God's blessings," Scaphis whispered. "Power to reshape galaxies. Immortality beyond your current mechanical existence. Victory eternal." Megatron stared at the vision of himself as a Chaos champion and felt something ancient stir in his spark. Not temptation, but recognition. This was what he had always been, a conqueror who would use any tool to achieve his goals. But the vision also showed something else. Chains. His enhanced form knelt before entities of pure malevolence, his will no longer entirely his own. Peace through tyranny, Megatron said slowly, is still peace. But this is slavery, wearing the mask of power. Scarface's form flickered with irritation. You speak of slavery, you who commands through fear and conquest. The Imperium calls you Xenos and abomination. They will hunt you until every Decepticon is scrap. But Chaos. The demon's voice became seductive. Chaos values strength. Chaos rewards ambition. You could rule entire systems in the Dark God's names. Is that not what you've always sought? Before Megatron could answer, Shockwave's logical voice cut through. Counter-proposal. We accept temporary alliance without commitment to these gods. We require resources, information, and tactical position. You require what precisely? The demon's eyes narrowed. Clever construct. You seek to use chaos without paying the tithe. It laughed, the sound echoing with the screams of 1 billion damned souls. Very well, chaos is patient. For now, I offer alliance without marks or oaths. But know this. Its form loomed larger, reality bending around it. The moment you draw upon warp energy to power your weapons, the moment you accept our modifications to your spark cores, the moment you kill in battle and feel the rush of Khorne's regard, you begin the journey. And no one who walks with chaos walks away unchanged. In the shadows of the fortress, other Decepticons had been listening. Barricade, always prone to violence, felt something stir at the mention of Khorne, a god of battle and bloodshed. Breakdown, paranoid and fear-driven, sensed Tzeentch's whispers promising knowledge of all threats before they materialized. Even disciplined soldiers like Soundwave's cassettes, rumble, frenzy, ravage, felt the warp's tendrils touching their sparks with promises of power. Starscream moved closer to the demon, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. And if one were to, hypothetically, seek individual arrangement with these gods, bypassing command structure, Starscream! Megatron's roar echoed through the fortress. He grabbed his second-in-command by the wing, yanking him back. You will not bargain with these entities without my authorization. Your authorization? Starscream hissed, wrenching free. We are stranded in a hostile universe, surrounded by enemies we barely understand, and you refuse power out of pride. This is why the war drags on endlessly, your inability to seize opportunities. Opportunities that enslave us. Better to rule in hell than serve in... The fortress shook. Not from their argument, but from external impact. Scaphus's form solidified, its demonic senses reaching out. It seems the Autobots have made themselves known to the Mechanicus, and where the Autobots appear. The demon smiled. The Imperium's attention follows. Perhaps you require more immediate motivation, Lord Megatron. The observation deck's windows shimmered, showing a planet's surface through warp scrying. Metallicus 6, the Forge World where the Autobots had crashed. The images showed Optimus Prime fighting alongside Mechanicus forces against Orc raiders, his heroism winning him temporary reprieve from execution. Your ancient enemy has found sanctuary with the Corpse Emperor's servants. Scaphus purred. He fights their battles, proves his worth. Soon they will make him their weapon. The Autobots will become sanctioned Xenos, tools of the Imperium. And what does that make you? The demon's question hung in the air like poison. Obsolete, hunted, alone. Megatron's fusion cannon extended fully, aimed directly at the demon's core. We bow, too. No one. Then stand alone, Scaphus replied without fear. Demons could not truly die in real space, merely be banished. Stand alone against an Imperium of 1,000,000 worlds, against Xenos horrors you cannot imagine, against the inexorable decay of your energon reserves in a universe where your fuel does not naturally exist. Stand alone and watch your Decepticons starve, malfunction, and fall to entropy, all because your pride will not bend. The demon leaned closer, its breath smelling of burning metal and sulfur. Or accept that in this galaxy, there are no heroes, there are only survivors, slaves, and the damned. Choose which you will be. In the silence that followed, Starscream's optics gleamed with barely restrained rebellion. Soundwave's emotionless facade cracked enough to show concern. Shockwave's logical processes calculated probabilities that all ended poorly. And Megatron, conqueror, tyrant, leader of the Decepticons for millions of years, felt something he hadn't experienced since the war began. Doubt. "We require time," Megatron said finally, his voice carefully controlled. "Time to understand this galaxy, its threats and its opportunities. If you want us as allies, Demon, then prove this alliance has value. Show us what the Imperium truly is. Show us why chaos is the superior choice." Scaphus's smile was triumphant. "Oh, I will do better than that. I will show you what awaits all who refuse the Dark God's blessings." The demon waved a mechadendrite, and the warp scrying windows shifted to show a dozen different worlds. Hive cities where trillions labored in darkness. Penal worlds where prisoners were worked to death in mines. Agri worlds where humans were bred like cattle. And battlefield after battlefield where Imperial guards died by the billions against threats that devoured planets. "This is the Imperium of Man," Scaphus intoned. "This is what your Autobot enemies will serve. A fascist theocracy that values human survival above all else, that exterminates Xenos without mercy, that burns heretics and mutants by the billions. They worship a corpse on a throne who devours the souls of 1,000 psychers daily just to maintain a lighthouse in the warp. They are fanatics, genocidal, and absolutely certain of their righteousness." Megatron watched the visions, his tactical processors absorbing the scale of the Imperium's cruelty. This was not the Federation the Autobots had sometimes allied with. This was something far worse, a civilization built on mountains of corpses, sustained by faith in a dying god, perpetuating itself through xenophobia and brutal suppression of innovation, and Optimus Prime was negotiating with them. "The Autobots have always been fools," Megatron said quietly. "They believe in freedom, in choice, in the inherent goodness of organic life. They will see the Imperium's brutality and think they can change it from within. They will compromise their principles one by one until nothing remains but servitude." His optics blazed brighter. "I will not make that mistake." "Then you accept." "I accept nothing," Megatron interrupted. "But I acknowledge reality. If the Autobots become the Imperium's weapons, then we require equivalent resources to oppose them. Provide us with information, technology, and tactical intelligence. Repair our ships. Show us how to synthesize energon-equivalent fuel from this universe's resources. Do this, and we will consider your offer of alliance." Scaphus nodded slowly. "The Dark Gods are patient. They have waited 10,000 years for their great game to bear fruit. They can wait a bit longer for Decepticons to see wisdom." The demon gestured, and corrupted tech priests emerged from the shadows, bearing data slates and modified tools. "We will provide what you need, and when the Imperium's treachery becomes clear, when the Autobots' weakness costs them everything, when you stand at the precipice of extinction." The demon's final words echoed as it dissipated into warp smoke. "We will be waiting." Starscream turned to Megatron once the demon had vanished. "This is a mistake. We should seize this power now before we become slaves to beings we don't understand." Megatron's voice was cold. I have led the Decepticons for millions of years, Starscream. I did not survive this long by accepting deals without understanding the cost. We will use these chaos forces for now, but we will not submit. Decepticons serve no gods. Yet even as he spoke the words, Megatron felt the warp's influence touching his spark. The energy sources the Dark Mechanicum had provided hummed with corruption. The very air in this fortress whispered promises, and somewhere in the distance he could feel four presences vast beyond comprehension, their attention momentarily focused on these newcomers to their eternal war. Khorne saw warriors of unmatched skill. Tzeentch saw ambition and schemes. Nurgle saw machines fearing entropy. Slaanesh saw beings seeking perfection through victory. The Chaos Gods had found new pieces for their game, and in the grim darkness of the far future, no one refused them forever. The Inquisitor arrived on Metallica 6 3 days after the Orc battle, and her reputation preceded her like the shadow of an executioner's blade. Inquisitor Covenant of the Ordo Xenos was a legend among the Imperium's secret police, a woman who had personally overseen the extermination of 17 alien species, who had burned entire hive levels to root out genestealer cults, who once ordered an exterminatus on a world of 60 billion souls because a single Xenos artifact remained uncaptured. She wore power armor the color of bone. Her face was augmented with cybernetic targeting implants, and she carried a bolt pistol blessed by the ecclesiarchy and a power sword that had tasted the blood of 1,000 Xenos. She did not believe in mercy. She believed in survival. And to her, the Autobots were Xenos, alien machines that should not exist. Optimus Prime stood in the Mechanicus' central cathedral once again, but this time the atmosphere had changed. The tech priests who had debated his nature now stood silent, their authority superseded. Inquisitor Covenant had brought her retinue, a squad of Death Watch Space Marines, elite Xenos hunters drawn from different chapters, their black armor decorated with silver insignias and purity seals. Each stood 7 feet tall, genetically enhanced super soldiers in ceramite armor, carrying bolters that fired rocket-propelled explosive rounds. They were overkill for human opponents. For the Autobots, they represented the Imperium's assessment, extreme threat requiring extreme response. Optimus Prime, Covenant's voice was cold, processed through her armor's Vox grill. Designation, unknown Xenos construct. Classification, potentially abominable intelligence. Status, pending termination or sanctioning. She circled him slowly, her retinal implants scanning every detail. Magos Deltrian 7 has testified that you fought Orc raiders, that you demonstrated tactical acumen and compassion for Imperial citizens. This is noted. She paused directly in front of him, her augmented eyes meeting his optics. Changes nothing. Bumblebee tensed beside Optimus, his damaged vocoder emitting a warning crackle. Ironhide's weapon systems powered up behind him, but Optimus remained still, his voice calm. Inquisitor, we mean the Imperium no harm. We are stranded in your galaxy by accident. We seek only to understand where we are and how to return home. Home, Covenant repeated. You claim to come from beyond our galaxy? Impossible. All Xenos in known space have been catalogued. You do not match any known classification. She gestured to a Mechanicus tech priest who approached bearing a data slate. Your technology uses principles our greatest minds cannot decipher. Your transformation ability violates known laws of mass conservation. You claim to possess individual consciousness, a clear marker of abominable intelligence, and your arrival coincided with massive warp disturbances that suggest chaos involvement. We have nothing to do with this chaos you speak of, Optimus replied firmly. Everyone says that. Covenant smiled without humor. Right before we discover the tentacles growing from their spine or the demonic pacts written in blood. The Xenos lie. The heretic lies. The demon lies. Only the Emperor's judgment is certain. She drew her bolt pistol in one smooth motion, aiming it between Optimus's optics. I could execute you now. The Mechanicus would protest, but I have authority absolute. One trigger pull, and your spark would scatter across this cathedral floor. The Death Watch Marines raised their bolters, targeting the other Autobots. Ratchet's medical protocols screamed warnings. Ironhide's cannons targeted the Space Marines, even as his tactical computers calculated their armor could withstand several direct hits. Bumblebee positioned himself to protect his leader. Optimus didn't move. If you were going to kill us, Inquisitor, you would have done so already. You came here for a reason beyond execution. Covenant's augmented eyes gleamed with something that might have been respect. Intelligent. Good. That intelligence is either your salvation or your damnation. We will determine which. She holstered her bolt pistol. The Imperium does not waste resources. If you are weapons that can be pointed at our enemies, you will be sanctioned as Xenos auxiliaries. If you are threats that cannot be controlled, you will be destroyed. We will determine this through trial. What kind of trial? Deltrian 7 stepped forward, his mechadendrites whirring with agitation. The Omnissiah's servants have already tested them in battle. Combat against orcs proves survival instinct, Magos, nothing more. Covenant's gaze never left Optimus. I will test their loyalty, their limitations, and their willingness to serve the Emperor's will. Refuse, and I will order your termination. Every Autobot will be melted down for raw materials. Succeed, she paused, and you may earn the right to exist in the Imperium. As property. Optimus felt his spark burn with indignation. To be reduced to property, to serve a fascist empire, to compromise everything the Autobots stood for, it was unthinkable. But looking at his companions, at Bumblebee's worried sensor signals, at Ratchet's increasing medical alarms as their energon reserves depleted, at Ironhide's barely restrained fury, Optimus knew they had no choice. "What would you have us do?" he asked quietly. Covenant smiled. It was not a kind expression. Metallica 6 faces a greater threat than Orc raiders. In the southern territories, a Genestealer cult has taken root. Xenos infiltrators who implant their genetic material in humans, creating hybrid abominations that worship the Tyranid hive mind. They have corrupted an entire hive spire. 60 million Imperial citizens compromised. The Mechanicus lacks the forces to root them out without massive collateral damage. She turned to her Death Watch squad. Kill Team Argentum will accompany you. You will enter Hive Primus, locate the Genestealer Patriarch, and terminate it. This will cause the cult to lose coordination. Then we burn the hive from orbit. Her cold eyes returned to Optimus. If you can work alongside the Emperor's Angels of Death, if you can kill Xenos without hesitation, if you can accept that 60 million infected humans must die for the Imperium's survival, then perhaps you understand what it means to serve in this galaxy. You're asking us to participate in genocide, Ratchet said, his medical protocols reeling. 60 million lives. 60 million already dead, Covenant interrupted. Genestealer infection cannot be cured. They are no longer human. They are Xenos breeding stock, their only purpose to summon the Tyranid swarms. We do not save them. We give them the Emperor's mercy. Death. Bumblebee's vocoder emitted a mournful tone. Even Ironhide's battle hunger seemed to falter at the scale. But Optimus understood the calculus. This Imperium measured death in billions. To them, 60 million was an acceptable loss, a necessary sacrifice. This was the nightmare they had fallen into. Autobots, Optimus said heavily. We will undertake this mission, but I want your word, Inquisitor. No orbital bombardment until all non-infected civilians are evacuated. Impossible, Covenant replied flatly. The evacuation would take weeks. The cult would escape. The infection would spread. She saw Optimus's optics brighten with defiance and added, "But if you can eliminate the Patriarch within 48 hours, I will allow a targeted evacuation of the upper hive levels. Those who have not yet been compromised may be saved. That is the only concession you will receive." 48 hours to infiltrate a city-sized structure filled with hostile aliens, fight through millions of hybrid cultists, kill an enemy they'd never encountered, and evacuate innocents, all while working with space marines who viewed them as barely tolerated Xenos. "Acceptable," Optimus said, knowing it was anything but. Covenant nodded to her Death Watch squad. The leader, a massive space marine whose pauldron bore the insignia of the Ultramarines chapter, stepped forward. His voice was a rumbling bass processed through his helmet's Vox grille. "I am Watch Sergeant Octavian. My kill team has hunted Xenos across 17 sectors. We have killed Orc war bosses, Eldar witches, and Tau commanders. But Genestealers..." His helmet turned to regard the Autobots. "Genestealers are different. They are fast, they are cunning, they implant their genetics with a kiss, and their venom clouds the mind. Your metal bodies may resist this, or you may find new horrors waiting." He extended a ceramite gauntleted hand. "If you fight beside us, you fight as battle brothers. If you betray us, I will tear your sparks from your chests with my bare hands." "Understood." Optimus took the offered hand, their grips meeting in mutual acknowledgement of warriors. "Understood, Sergeant. Autobots do not betray their allies." "Then we move at dusk," Octavian replied. "The cult is most active at night. We will strike during their worship rituals, when the Patriarch is most exposed." He turned to his squad. A space wolf named Bjorn with frost patterns on his armor, a blood angel called Dante whose armor was crimson and gold, a Raven Guard designated Shade whose black armor seemed to absorb light, and a salamander named Vulcan whose armor bore flame motifs. Each was a legend from their home chapter. Together, they had killed thousands. As the briefing continued, Bumblebee moved closer to Optimus, his vocoder managing to form one word through the static. "Prime." Optimus looked down at his scout, seeing the fear in Bumblebee's optical sensors. "I know, old friend. This is not the war we chose. But it is the war we must fight to survive. And if surviving means becoming what we fought against..." The question hung in the air. Optimus had no answer. That night, the Autobots prepared for the mission with Ratchet conducting emergency repairs and Energon redistribution. They were running on less than 30% reserves, and this mission would consume much of what remained. Ironhide checked his weapons systems obsessively. Bumblebee ran combat simulations against unknown parameters. And Optimus stood alone on the Cathedrum's observation deck, looking out across Metallica 6's hellish landscape. Somewhere beyond the smog and Manufactorum fires, Hive Primus waited. A city of spires housing billions, now infected with alien taint that would be purged with fire. He thought of Earth, where he had learned to value individual life. He thought of Cybertron, where the war began over ideals of freedom versus order. And he thought of what he was about to do, enable the death of millions to prove the Autobots could serve an empire that viewed compassion as weakness. "The needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few," he whispered, an old Earth philosophy. But even as he spoke the words, he felt his spark dim slightly. Each compromise cost something. Each necessary evil extracted a price. Behind him, Inquisitor Covenant watched through her retinal implants, analyzing every gesture. She had seen this before, aliens and auxiliary forces brought into Imperial service. Some adapted and became useful tools. Others broke under the weight of what the Imperium demanded. She would know soon which category the Autobots fell into, and if they broke, she would add their names to the long list of Xenos she had personally exterminated in the Emperor's name. In the grim darkness of the far future, everyone served. The only question was whether you served willingly or as scrap, hive. Primus descended into the planet's crust like a cancer, its spires reaching kilometers into the polluted sky, while its depths burrowed through bedrock to tap geothermal cores. 60 million souls had lived here before the genestealer infection. Now, 40 million were hybrids, human xenos abominations carrying genestealer genetics through generations until the purest forms emerged to summon the Tyranid hive fleet. The Autobots and Death Watch kill Team Argentum infiltrated through the upper hive access tunnels at dusk, when the cult's prayers to the four-armed emperor reached fever pitch. Optimus had to crouch to fit through passages built for humans, his sensors tracking heat signatures, biological markers, and the strange psychic resonance Ratchet's scanners identified as the Brood Mind, a telepathic network linking all cult members. "Contact," Watch Sergeant Octavian whispered through the Vox, his auspex showing movement ahead. "Neophyte hybrids. First generation, still mostly human." Bumblebee's optics focused through the darkness, his superior sensors painting a thermal image. Humans with slight mutations, elongated arms, pale skin, a slight hunch to their posture. They wore mining equipment and carried improvised weapons, and they moved with coordinated purpose that spoke of hive mind intelligence. "They're workers," Ratchet transmitted quietly. "Medical scans show them as functionally human with minor genetic alterations. They might still be saved." "They cannot," Dante the Blood Angel interrupted, his crimson helmet turning toward the medic. "The genestealer curse runs in their blood. They are lost. Show mercy through swift death." Before Ratchet could protest, the cultists noticed them. One opened its mouth to scream. Ironhide's cannon spoke first. The photon charge vaporized the cultist's head, and Kill Team Argentum moved as one. Bjorn's frost blade decapitated 2 hybrids before they could react. Shade's silenced stalker bolter coughed, each round finding a skull. Vulcan's flamer turned a hallway into an inferno. The cultists' screams cut short as promethium consumed them. It was over in seconds, 15 cultists dead without raising the alarm. Bumblebee's vocoder emitted a horrified warble. These had looked almost human. If their mutations were minor, if genetic therapy existed in this galaxy, if there was any hope. "Keep moving," Octavian ordered, already advancing deeper. "The Patriarch awaits. Every second we delay, more innocents are infected." The kill team descended through Hive Primus's levels, each deeper than the last, each darker and more corrupted. The upper Hive levels showed signs of struggle. Imperial propaganda posters torn down, Emperor statues defaced with the four-armed star of the Tyranid god. But the middle Hive revealed the true horror. Entire families turned hybrid, children with Xenos genes playing in streets where corpses of the faithful lay rotting, and nurseries where human infants showed the telltale signs of third-generation infection. Ratchet stopped at one such nursery, his medical scanners fixating on a child no more than 2 years old. The infant showed slight carapace growths on its shoulders. Its eyes too wide, its fingers slightly elongated. It gurgled happily, reaching toward the Autobot medic. "Prime," Ratchet's voice cracked. "This child is infected, but it's still mostly human. If we had time, if we had equipment—" "We have neither," Octavian said, raising his bolt pistol. "No." Ratchet moved between the Space Marine and the child. "I won't let you execute an infant." The standoff lasted 3 seconds. Then Vulcan the Salamander stepped forward, his voice surprisingly gentle for a 7-foot killing machine. "Brother Medic, I understand. The Salamanders value all human life. We would save this child if we could." His flamer lowered. "But look closer. Use your deepest scans." Ratchet's advanced sensors penetrated the child's cellular structure, and his spark went cold. The genestealer genetics weren't just in the DNA, they were rewriting it, spreading, transforming. In weeks, maybe days, this infant would metamorphose into something no longer human. And its psychic signature was already connected to the Brood Mind, feeding information to the Patriarch. "It's already gone," Ratchet whispered. "The Emperor's mercy," Vulcan said softly, and his flamer spoke. The child died instantly, painlessly, without suffering. But Ratchet would carry that moment forever. They descended further, the air growing thick with alien musk and the psychic pressure of the brood mind. The walls here were covered in organic secretions, the architecture transformed by genestealer instinct into something resembling a hive. And the cultists grew more mutated. Second-generation hybrids with 4 arms, third generation with carapace armor and claws, fourth generation nearly indistinguishable from pure strain genestealers. "We're close," Shade reported, his Raven Guard sensors detecting a massive psychic presence below. The Patriarch nests in the geothermal core. It's summoning the brood. They entered a vast chamber that had once been a plasma reactor, but now served as a temple. Thousands of cultists filled the space, prostrated before a massive figure on a throne of bones and metal, the genestealer Patriarch. It stood 12 feet tall, a nightmare fusion of tyrannid purity and generations of human breeding. 4 arms, each ending in rending claws that could tear through ceramite armor, a carapace that shimmered with psychic power, and a third eye on its forehead that blazed with telepathic command. It saw them. And the brood mind exploded with rage. "Autobots, transform!" Optimus roared, and the kill team charged as one. The cultists swarmed like a living tide. Bumblebee shifted to vehicle mode, his speed allowing him to plow through hybrid masses, his plasma stinger dropping cultists with surgical precision. Ironhide became an immovable fortress, his cannons speaking thunder, each shot turning a dozen cultists into vapor. Ratchet, armed with surgical tools repurposed as weapons, defended the team's flanks with desperate efficiency. The Death Watch moved like death incarnate. Bjorn's wolf howl echoed as he carved through pure strain genestealers with his frost blade, each strike freezing alien flesh before shattering it. Dante's jump pack roared, carrying him above the fray to rain bolt rounds into the densest formations. Shade vanished into the shadows, his knife finding Patriarch guards with ruthless efficiency. Vulcan's flamer turned the chamber into hell itself, the alien cultists screaming as Prometheum consumed them. And Octavian fought his way toward the Patriarch itself, his bolter barking commands. "Focus fire on the central target. Bring it down." But the Patriarch was not some mindless beast. It was ancient, cunning, having seeded this cult 3 generations ago. Its psychic power radiated across the brood mind, coordinating cultists with military precision. Pure strains genestealers, the true Xenos form, burst from ventilation shafts, their 6-limbed forms moving with horrifying speed, their claws capable of tearing through space marine armor. One pounced on Dante, its claws scoring his ceramite breastplate. The Blood Angel roared his chapter's battle cry and grabbed the creature mid-strike, tearing it apart with his bare hands. But its venom kiss had splashed across his helmet seals. "Contaminated," he vocalized, but did not retreat. If he was infected, he would die in battle before the transformation took hold. Bumblebee saw his opening. The Patriarch's attention was on Octavian. The scout accelerated, transforming mid-charge, his momentum carrying him up the throne of bones. His plasma stinger aimed for the Patriarch's third eye. The Patriarch moved faster. Its claw caught Bumblebee mid-air, slamming him into the ground with force that cracked his armor plating. The scout's damaged vocoder screamed static as the alien pinned him, its mandibles opening to deliver the killing strike. Optimus's energon blade took the Patriarch's arm off at the elbow. The alien's psychic scream deafened the brood mind. Cultists stumbled, their coordination broken. Optimus pressed the advantage, his blade singing as it carved through alien flesh, each strike calculated for maximum damage to the creature's nervous system. But the Patriarch had survived for centuries by being unkillable. It regenerated, its severed arm already regrowing, and its remaining claws lunged for Optimus's spark chamber. Then Octavian arrived. The Watch Sergeant's power fist, an oversized gauntlet crackling with energy fields, slammed into the Patriarch's skull with the force of a battering ram. Circle, bone shattered. Psychic energy exploded. The Patriarch shrieked as its third eye ruptured, its brood-mind connection severing. Across the chamber, thousands of cultists collapsed, their telepathic coordination shattered. The Pure Strain's Genestealers thrashed in confusion. The entire cult's command structure broke. "Now!" Optimus roared, and the kill team unleashed everything. Ironhide's cannons, Vulcan's flamer, Bjorn's frost blade, Shade's precision strikes, Dante's rage-fueled assault, and Optimus's energon blade, all focused on the Patriarch simultaneously. The alien died screaming, its psychic death throes echoing across the hive, and with its death, the cult began to tear itself apart. Lower generation hybrids, freed from the brood mind's control, looked around in horror at what they'd done. Higher generation hybrids thrashed in agony, their genetics demanding coordination that no longer existed. Pure Strain's Genestealers fled into the depths. Mission accomplished, Octavian reported to Inquisitor Covenant's Vox. Patriarch terminated. Cult neutralized. Understood, Covenant's cold voice replied. Begin evacuation of uninfected civilians. You have 6 hours before orbital strike. 6 hours to evacuate millions through a hive city whose transportation infrastructure was devastated by cult activity. It was impossible. They would save thousands, maybe tens of thousands. The rest would burn. Bumblebee, his armor cracked and leaking vital fluids, looked up at Optimus with his optics dimming. His vocoder managed 2 words through the static. "Worth it?" Optimus helped his scout stand, his own spark feeling heavier than it ever had on Cybertron. They had fought heroically. They had proven their worth to the Imperium. They had killed an alien threat and saved lives. They had also enabled the death of millions, executed infected humans who might have been saved with different technology, and compromised every principle the Autobots stood for. "I don't know," Optimus replied honestly, "but we survived. And tomorrow, we fight another war in this nightmare galaxy." Behind them, Vulcan approached, his flamer still smoking. "You fought with honor, Prime. Not all Xenos would have protected the scout at cost to themselves. The salamanders remember such deeds." He paused. "But understand, this is what service to the Imperium demands. Every day, every battle, the choice between survival and damnation is the only choice we are given." As they ascended toward the upper hive to begin evacuations, the Autobots heard the cultists' final prayers echoing through the depths, desperate calls to their four-armed emperor, begging for salvation that would never come. In 6 hours, the orbital cannons would speak, and Hive Primus would become a crater visible from space. The Decepticons, watching from orbit through scavenged sensor arrays, saw everything. Starscream's voice was triumphant. "You see, Megatron, the Autobots have become the Imperium's lapdogs, killing on command. They have no honor left." But Megatron said nothing. He watched Optimus Prime emerge from the hive, covered in alien blood and human ash, carrying wounded civilians to safety even as his energon reserves reached critical. The Autobot leader had not broken. He had bent, compromised, done terrible things, but had not abandoned his core mission of protecting those who could not protect themselves. It made him more dangerous, not less. "The Autobots," Megatron said finally, "have learned what this galaxy demands. Soon, we all will." In the dark Mechanicum fortress, Demon Prince Scaphus smiled. The first seeds of corruption were planted. Optimus Prime had killed for the Imperium. He had accepted necessary evil, and every compromise made the next one easier. The Transformers War had come to Warhammer 40K, and in this nightmare future, No one remained unchanged. The world designated Orpheus VII had been dying for 3 centuries, its hive cities slowly succumbing to industrial collapse and resource depletion. The Imperium had marked it for abandonment, 20 billion souls left to fade into the Emperor's grace, while more strategically valuable worlds received attention. But intelligence reports suggested Decepticon activity in the southern wastes, and Inquisitor Covenant was nothing if not thorough. She sent the Autobots to investigate. Optimus Prime led his team across Orpheus VII's rust-red deserts, where the bones of failed mining operations jutted from dunes like the ribs of dead gods. Their energon reserves were critically low, 15% and falling, but Ratchet had managed to synthesize a crude substitute from Imperial Promethium mixed with plasma coils. It functioned at 60% efficiency and tasted wrong to their systems, but it kept them operational. "Contact," Ironhide growled, his sensors detecting familiar energy signatures ahead. Decepticon power cores, multiple. The Decepticons had established a forward base in an abandoned Promethium refinery, their vessels partially repaired through scavenged Imperial technology and Dark Mechanicum assistance. Optimus could see the corruption even from a distance. The metal was wrong, warped by warp exposure, decorated with symbols that hurt to look at directly. The 8-pointed star of chaos undivided. "They've aligned with the enemy," Bumblebee's vocoder crackled, his repairs from the Genestealer mission still incomplete. "Or been forced to," Ratchet countered, though his tone lacked conviction. "We know Energon's scarcity. They face the same desperation." Before Optimus could respond, Megatron emerged from the refinery. The Decepticon warlord looked unchanged, still massive, still radiating menace, his fusion cannon gleaming with malevolent intent. But his optics burned with something new, certainty born of terrible knowledge. "Prime," Megatron's voice echoed across the wasteland. "I wondered when the Imperium would send its newest lapdog to hunt me." Optimus stepped forward, his team spreading into combat formation. "Megatron, I see you've made your choice. Chaos, the very entities that corrupt this galaxy, and you ally with them." "Ally? No." Megatron's laugh was bitter. "I use them as I use all tools. But you, Prime, you've become something worse, a weapon for fascists, a killer for fanatics who genocide billions in the name of their corpse god. How many innocents died when you burned Hive Primus?" The accusation struck harder than any fusion blast. Optimus felt his spark constrict. "We saved thousands. You enabled the murder of millions," Megatron roared. "And you call it mercy? This is what your precious freedom has become in this nightmare galaxy, complicity in atrocity." His fusion cannon powered up. "At least I'm honest about what I am, a conqueror, a tyrant, but you, Prime, you've become a hypocrite wearing the mask of heroism. And you've become a slave to chaos," Optimus replied coldly, his ion blaster charging. "I can see the corruption on your vessels, Megatron. The symbols, the warp taint. How long before it claims your spark? I control it. No one controls chaos." Optimus's voice carried the weight of what he'd learned from Kill Team Argentum, from Inquisitor Covenant, from every Imperial source that spoke of the ruinous powers in terrified whispers. "It corrupts everything it touches. Your Decepticons are already damned." Starscream emerged beside Megatron, and Optimus's tactical computers screamed warnings. The Seeker's frame bore visible mutations. His wings had developed blade-like protrusions that pulsed with warp energy. His optics burned with unnatural color, and when he smiled, his voice carried multiple tones. Damned or elevated. The gods of chaos offer power you cannot imagine, Prime. Power to reshape galaxies. I have tasted it, and I am more than I ever was. "You're corrupted," Bumblebee transmitted, his vocoder unable to hide the horror. "Starscream, what have you done?" "I have evolved," Starscream purred, warp lightning crackling between his claws, a gift from Sinch, the architect of fate. While you grovel before organic weaklings, I have ascended. Soon, I will be greater than even Megatron." Megatron's backhand sent Starscream crashing into the refinery wall. "You will remember your place, Second. The mutations you bear are tools, nothing more. We use chaos, we do not serve it." But even as Megatron spoke, Optimus saw the lie. The Decepticon leader's frame showed subtle changes, slight warping of his armor plating, a faint aura of warp energy around his fusion cannon, and in his optics, a flicker of something that was no longer entirely Cybertronian. The corruption was slow, insidious, but inevitable. "You've already lost," Optimus said quietly. "You just haven't realized it yet." Before Megatron could respond, the ground trembled. Not from their standoff, but from something far worse. Ratchet's sensors shrieked warnings. Seismic activity, massive biological readings emerging from beneath the surface. Prime, these readings match nothing in Cybertronian databases. The desert exploded. They burst from underground with horrifying coordination. Hundreds, thousands of chitinous nightmares moving with predatory grace. Six-limbed creatures with scything talons. Larger warrior forms bearing ranged bioweapons that fired living ammunition. Flying creatures that blotted out the rust-colored sky. And behind them, towering above the rest, a Carnifex, a living battering ram the size of a building, its biocannons charging with organic energy. Tyranids. Megatron's tactical computers identified them first. The Dark Mechanicum had shown him images of these horrors. The Hive Fleets, galaxy-devouring swarms that consumed entire worlds and converted all biomass into more Tyranids. All units, defensive positions. The ancient enemies found themselves fighting side by side without discussion or agreement. Survival demanded it. Optimus's ion blaster carved through Hormagons, the smaller Tyranid shock troops. But for everyone he killed, 3 more scuttled forward. Their claws scored his armor, testing for weaknesses. Bumblebee transformed rapidly, using speed and agility to avoid the swarm, his plasma stinger dropping termagants with precision shots. But precision meant nothing against infinite numbers. Ironhide and Megatron found themselves back to back, an impossible alliance forged in the fires of mutual desperation. The Autobots' cannons and the Decepticons' fusion cannons spoke in devastating harmony, creating kill zones that momentarily held back the tide. But the Tyranids adapted, smaller creatures using their dead as cover, warriors flanking through rubble, raveners burrowing to attack from below. Starscream took to the sky, his corrupted form allowing him to fly longer than normal Cybertronian thrust systems. His null rays, enhanced with warp energy, turned gargoyles into ash. But the flying Tyranids were learning, adapting their attack patterns with each pass. Ratchet realized the horrifying truth first. "Prime, these creatures, they're learning from us. Each wave adapts to our tactics faster than the last." The hive mind. The Tyranids weren't individuals, but a single, vast intelligence using billions of bodies. Every Autobot tactic, every Decepticon weapon, every combat pattern, the swarm analyzed and countered. Optimus saw a Tyranid warrior dodge his ion blast before he fired, predicting the shot through pattern recognition. Ironhide's suppression fire became less effective as Hormagaunts learned to use terrain, and the swarm never stopped coming. The Carnifex charged, its biocannons firing living projectiles that exploded on impact. Megatron's fusion cannon struck it center mass, blowing a crater in its carapace, but the creature kept coming. Its regeneration was visible, wounds sealing even as it moved. Optimus transformed, using his truck mode's momentum to ram the beast, his strength allowing him to knock it off balance. It wasn't enough. The Carnifex's tail whip caught him mid-transform, sending him crashing through the refinery wall. Its massive bulk followed, mandibles opening wide enough to swallow him whole. Megatron's fusion cannon fired point-blank into the creature's head, finally dropping it. For one moment, Autobot leader and Decepticon warlord locked optics across the corpse of an alien nightmare. Neither spoke, neither needed to. The message was clear: their war meant nothing here. The galaxy was filled with horrors that made their ancient conflict seem petty. "Retreat," Optimus commanded, his tactical systems showing the swarm still growing. "We cannot win this. Fall back to..." The sky burned. Orbital bombardment lances descended from the Emperor's Righteous, an Imperial Navy frigate in orbit. Each lance strike vaporized hundreds of Tyranids, turning the battlefield into a hellscape of superheated plasma and alien ash. The coordinated strikes created a corridor, a killing field through which the Transformers could escape. "Attention, Xenos forces!" Inquisitor Covenant's voice crackled through Vox channels. "Extract immediately. Orbital bombardment will continue for 6 hours, then this world burns. You have 20 minutes. Both Autobot and Decepticon forces ran. Pride meant nothing against extinction. Optimus transformed, his team following as they raced across the desert toward extraction coordinates. Behind them, Megatron's Decepticons retreated to their corrupted vessels, Starscream's laughter echoing with madness as warp energy shields deflected Tyranid bioweapons. The Tyranids pursued until the orbital bombardment intensified, the Imperial Navy following Covenant's orders with mechanical precision. The world of Orpheus VII, 20 billion souls still on its surface, was declared perdita, lost to the Tyranid swarm. Exterminatus would follow within the week, virus bombs reducing the entire planet to lifeless rock to deny the Hive Fleet its biomass. 20 billion lives, sacrificed without hesitation. As Optimus's extraction shuttle climbed toward orbit, he looked back at the dying world. Somewhere down there, the Tyranids were consuming everything: the hives, the people, the very atmosphere. And the Imperium's response was to simply erase the planet from existence rather than risk the swarm spreading. "This is normal for them," Ratchet said quietly, his medical protocol still trying to process the scale. "They lose worlds like this constantly. Billions die, and they just, mark it on a chart and move on. Because they have no choice." Octavian's voice came through the Vox. The Watch Sergeant had been monitoring from orbit. "The galaxy is dying, Prime. The Imperium loses 100 worlds a year to chaos, Xenos, heresy, or simple collapse. We save what we can. We mourn nothing. We fight on. This is what you've entered." Bumblebee's damaged vocoder managed a question. "And Megatron?" Optimus watched the Decepticon vessels break orbit, heading toward the Eye of Terror where chaos waited. He's chosen his path. Corruption over compromise. Damnation over duty. His optics dimmed. Or perhaps he sees no difference anymore. What Optimus didn't see was Starscream aboard the Decepticon flagship, his corrupted frame pulsing with warp energy, his spark slowly being rewritten by Tzeentch's blessings. The architect of fate whispered promises: power over Megatron, dominion over the Decepticons, godhood itself. And Starscream, ambitious fool that he was, listened. The corruption was spreading, and in the grim darkness of the far future, no one remained pure forever. Starscream's transformation accelerated during the warp jump back to Dark Mechanicum territory, and Megatron watched it happen with growing unease that he refused to voice as weakness. The Seeker's frame writhed in the ship's cargo bay, servos grinding as new structures erupted from his chassis. The mutations were no longer subtle. His wings now bore crystalline growths that refracted light in impossible colors. His claws extended and reshaped into blades that wept corrosive fluid, and across his chest plating, the symbol of Tzeentch burned itself into being, a spiral eye with 9 rays. "It hurts," Starscream gasped, but his voice carried exhilaration rather than pain. "It hurts, and it's glorious. I can feel the Architect's gaze upon me, Megatron." He shows me futures, thousands of them, where I rule and you serve. Soundwave monitored the changes with clinical precision, his sensors analyzing the warp corruption infecting Starscream's spark. Warning: subject's spark signature destabilizing. Recommendation: immediate quarantine or termination. You wouldn't dare, Starscream hissed, warp lightning arcing between his claws. I am blessed by a god. I'm becoming something greater than any Decepticon has ever been. You should be grateful I allow you to witness my ascension. Megatron's fusion cannon extended, aimed at Starscream's spark chamber. You are becoming compromised. The entity you serve is using you, fool. It offers power while stealing your free will. Free will? Starscream laughed, the sound layered with demonic harmonics. What good is free will in a galaxy that devours the weak? You cling to your pride, Megatron, while I embrace evolution. Watch, let me show you what the Architect grants his faithful. The Seeker's optics blazed with warp fire, and suddenly the cargo bay filled with illusions. Megatron saw himself from a dozen angles simultaneously, each showing a different future. Megatron corrupted by Khorne, a blood-soaked tyrant leading demon legions. Megatron defeated by Optimus, his spark extinguished. Megatron alone and starving as Energon ran out. Megatron kneeling before the four Chaos Gods, begging for scraps. These are your possible futures. Starscream's voice came from everywhere. Tzeentch shows me the paths. In most, you fail, you die, you become irrelevant. But if you accept his blessings, enough. Megatron's fusion blast shattered the illusions. The cargo bay returned to normal, Starscream stumbling as the warp connection severed. I am not some primitive savage to be awed by magic tricks. The Chaos Gods want our sparks. They dress it up as blessing, as power, as evolution, but it is slavery. Starscream's mutated form straightened, his new claws flexing. Then remain a slave to your pride. I will take what you refuse. His wings spread, the crystalline growths catching the ship's dim light. The Architect has shown me the way. While you negotiate and hesitate, I will become what you always feared, your superior. He vanished. Not transformed, vanished. Warp teleportation, a gift from Tzeentch that allowed his blessed to step through the Imperium itself. Soundwave's flat voice cut through the silence. Assessment: Starscream compromised beyond recovery. Recommendation stands: termination. Not yet, Megatron replied, though his tactical processors agreed with Soundwave's analysis. He is still useful, and his corruption serves as warning to the others. The Warlord turned to his remaining forces. Shockwave, Soundwave, Barricade, and a dozen lesser Decepticons. Let Starscream believe he has power. Let him think the Chaos Gods favor him. When the time comes, we will use his ambition against him. But Shockwave's logical voice carried doubt. Query: can we resist what corrupted Starscream so easily? Our exposure to warp energy increases with each cycle. The Dark Mechanicum's fuel sources are tainted. Our weapons now channel warp power. How long before we all bear the marks? It was the question Megatron refused to acknowledge. Every day in Chaos-held territory, every hour they used corrupted resources, every battle where they accepted Dark Mechanicum support. The taint spread. He could feel it in his own spark sometimes, a whisper promising strength, victory, dominion. The voice of Khorne, drawn to his warrior spirit. We maintain discipline, Megatron said firmly. We use chaos without accepting it. We are Decepticons. We have fought for millions of years without gods. We will not start now. Deep in the ship's lower decks, other Decepticons were less certain. Barricade felt Khorne's pull strongest. The blood god whispered of endless battle, of worthy foes, of honor through slaughter. Each kill made the whispers louder. Breakdown heard Tzeentch's promises of knowing every threat before it manifested, ending his paranoia through omniscience. Even Soundwave's cassettes, Ravage, Rumble, Frenzy, felt the warp touching their sparks with offers tailored to their natures. The corruption was inevitable. The question was whether they could delay it long enough to achieve their objectives. When they reached the Dark Mechanicum fortress, Demon Prince Scarfus greeted them with barely concealed satisfaction. "Ah, Lord Megatron, I see one of your number has accepted enlightenment. Starscream will make a fine champion of Tzeentch, assuming he survives the transformation. Many do not." "What do you want, Demon?" Megatron's patience was exhausted. "To offer you a choice," Scarfus replied, its form solidifying into something almost diplomatic. "Your Autobots' enemies have become sanctioned Xenos auxiliaries of the Imperium. They fight alongside Space Marines. They serve Inquisitor Covenant. Soon, they will be deployed against you with full Imperial support." The demon's smile widened. "Unless you accept equivalent support from Chaos." "We discussed this." "You discussed temporary alliance," Scarfus interrupted. "I offer more. The Black Legion, Abaddon the Despoiler's forces, are launching raids in this sector. Join them. Fight alongside Chaos Space Marines. Learn what true power looks like. And if you still refuse the gods' blessings afterward..." The demon shrugged. "At least you'll understand what you're rejecting." Megatron's tactical processors evaluated the offer. Fighting alongside Chaos Space Marines would provide intelligence on Imperium capabilities, access to resources, and combat experience in this galaxy's warfare. It would also deepen their corruption and create alliances that might prove impossible to break. But the alternative was facing the Imperium's full might alone while the Autobots grew stronger through Imperial support. "One battle," Megatron said finally. "We will observe this Black Legion. We will fight alongside them if their objectives align with ours. But we make no oaths, no pacts, no deals with your gods." "Of course," Scarfus purred. "Khorne cares not from whence the blood flows, only that it flows. You will kill in his name whether you acknowledge him or not." The Black Legion warband arrived within cycles. 3 Chaos Space Marine strike cruisers bearing the symbols of the War Master Eternal, Abaddon the Despoiler. The Chaos Marines who teleported aboard the Decepticon flagship were nightmares made manifest. 10,000-year-old warriors fused with their armor, bearing mutations from all 4 Chaos gods, their voices harmonizing with demonic essence. Their leader, Chaos Lord Vorthak, regarded Megatron with eyes that had witnessed the Horus heresy itself. "So, the sentient machines. Scarfus says you fight like the Space Marines of old, honorable, capable, deadly." His voice was a grinding bass. "We shall see. Our target is an Imperial convoy carrying gene seed, the precious genetic material needed to create new Space Marines. We will take it. You will help. Success means your forces gain access to our supply lines. Failure means we leave you to the Imperium's mercy." "Acceptable," Megatron replied. "What resistance?" "Ultramarines," Vorthak said with relish. "The sons of Gilliman himself. 5 squads protecting the convoy, led by a captain. Good fighters. Pure, uncorrupted." His smile showed teeth filed to points. "They will die screaming, just like their brothers during the heresy." The battle occurred in the void between stars, where the Imperium convoy attempted to run the gauntlet through chaos-held space. The Ultramarine strike cruiser, the Courage Eternal, was outnumbered but not outgunned. Their Nova cannon spoke first, one shot vaporizing a Dark Mechanicum escort vessel. The Decepticons launched alongside Chaos Space Marines in boarding pods, the fusion of Xenos technology and Chaos-corrupted craft, creating a hybrid assault that confused Imperial sensors. They breached the Ultramarines' hull in 6 locations simultaneously. What followed was brutal close-quarters combat that taught the Decepticons what Space Marines truly were. These weren't the Death Watch they'd fought alongside. These were pure Adeptus Astartes, uncompromising and efficient. Each ultramarine moved with centuries of combat experience, their bolters barking precisely aimed death, their combat blades finding gaps in Decepticon armor with practiced ease. Barricade engaged an ultramarine sergeant in melee and discovered his claws, strong enough to tear through orc flesh, barely scratched ceramite armor. The Space Marine's power fist shattered Barricade's chest plating with one blow, and only Soundwave's intervention with a sonic blast saved the aggressive Decepticon from termination. But the Chaos Marines were worse nightmares. Vorthak himself dueled the Ultramarine captain in the convoy's command deck, and Megatron watched as the Chaos Lord demonstrated what 10,000 years of corruption accomplished. Vorthak moved faster than any Space Marine should, his strength enhanced beyond natural augmentation, his chaos-blessed weapon drinking the captain's blood and screaming with demonic hunger. "For the War Master!" Vorthak roared, and the name had power. The very air trembled with warp energy. "For the gods! Blood for Khorne! Skulls for the Skull Throne!" The captain died heroically, his final words a prayer to the Emperor. Vorthak tore the warrior's gene seed from his corpse with bare hands, holding the precious genetic material aloft. "This is what we fight for. This is what we take from the false Imperium. They cannot replace what we steal. Each gene seed lost is one less Space Marine to oppose us." Megatron stood amid the carnage, his fusion cannon still smoking from eliminating Ultramarines, and understood the scale of Chaos's threat. The Black Legion wasn't just an army, it was a force of nature, sustained by hatred 10 millennia old, enhanced by gods of malevolence, fighting a war that would never end because ending would mean acknowledging defeat. And Starscream stood among them, his corrupted form dancing with warp lightning, his laughter manic as he gunned down loyalist Space Marines with weapons that screamed demon screams. He had found his purpose. He had found his gods. He had fallen, and he did not care. As the convoy burned and the gene seed was loaded onto Chaos vessels, Vorthak approached Megatron. "You fight well, machine, but you fight without conviction, without faith. The gods notice such things." He gestured to his warband, each bearing marks of Chaos's favor. In this galaxy, faith is power. The Imperium knows this. They worship their corpse emperor, and reality bends to their belief. Chaos knows this. We pray to the dark gods and gain strength beyond mortal limits. His tone became almost pitying. "You believe in nothing. How long can faithlessness survive in a galaxy where belief shapes reality?" Megatron had no answer. For millions of years, Decepticons had needed no gods, but this was not their universe. Behind them, Starscream spread his mutated wings, his spark now more warp essence than Cybertronian energy. The first transformer to fully embrace chaos, the first to bear the gods' marks, the first to trade freedom for power. He would not be the last. The summons came with the weight of absolute authority. Robut Guilliman, Lord Commander of the Imperium, Primarch of the Ultramarines, son of the Emperor, wished to meet the Xenos machines known as Autobots. Optimus Prime stood in the strategium of the Macragge's Honor, the Ultramarines' flagship, and felt his spark constrict with something close to awe. The ship was a cathedral of war, kilometers long, housing tens of thousands of crew armed with weapons that could crack planets. And at its center, in a chamber built for gods, stood Robut Guilliman. The Primarch was 10 feet tall, clad in the armor of fate, artificer craftsmanship that made Cybertronian engineering look primitive. His presence filled the room like gravity, his very existence bending reality around him. He was over 10,000 years old, had died and been resurrected, had seen the Imperium's golden age and its current decay. When his eyes, blue as Terra's lost oceans, focused on Optimus, the Autobot leader felt scrutinized by something beyond mortal comprehension. Optimus Prime, Guilliman's voice was measured, intelligent, and carried the weariness of someone who had seen everything. Designation: unknown Xenos. Origin: unknown. Capabilities: considerable. Loyalty: uncertain. He gestured to Inquisitor Covenant, who stood in the chamber's shadows. The Inquisitor believes you can be useful. I am less convinced. Optimus had prepared diplomatic responses, but the Primarch's directness demanded honesty. Lord Guilliman, we did not choose to come to your galaxy. We do not wish to be your enemies. We seek only to survive and potentially return home. A noble goal, Guilliman replied, pacing with the restless energy of a warrior king. But unrealistic. The warp does not easily release what it takes. You may be stranded here permanently. He stopped, his gaze intense. Which means you must make a choice. Serve the Imperium, oppose it, or attempt neutrality. I will address each option. The Primarch activated a hololith, showing the galaxy split by the Great Rift, a wound in reality separating the Imperium Sanctus from the Imperium Nihilus. This is the state of humanity, besieged on all fronts. Chaos in the Eye of Terror, Tyranids from beyond, Necrons awakening, Orcs endless, Eldar scheming, Tau expanding. We lose 100 worlds a year. We replace 50 through conquest. We are bleeding to death across millennia. His eyes hardened. And into this comes you, sentient machines of unknown origin. Do you understand why I must consider you a threat? We understand, Optimus replied. Your history with artificial intelligence is tragic. We represent your greatest fear. My greatest fear, Guilliman corrected, is failure. That I will watch my father's dream die because I lack the strength to preserve it. That I will become complicit in the Imperium's decay. He studied Optimus with unsettling intensity. You fought alongside Deathwatch at Hive Primus. You enabled the death of millions to save billions. You have proven capable of necessary evil. This suggests intelligence or dangerous idealism that will eventually betray you. The assessment stung because it was accurate. Optimus had compromised his principles repeatedly since arriving in this nightmare galaxy. Each compromise made the next easier. How long before he became indistinguishable from the tyrants he'd fought? You also, Guilliman continued, represent a strategic asset. Your transformation ability allows infiltration. Your weapons rival our own. Your battlefield coordination suggests advanced tactical protocols. If you serve the Imperium, truly serve, you could turn the tide in campaigns across multiple sectors. He paused. But if you betray us, you become an intelligence leak with access to Imperial doctrine, Mechanicus technology, and space marine tactics. You become a threat that must be eliminated at any cost. Bumblebee shifted beside Optimus, his damaged vocoder silent, but his body language nervous. Ratchet's medical scanners tracked Guilliman's servo-skull attendants, calculating threat levels. Ironhide's weapons were powered down, but ready. They all understood this conversation would determine their fate. The alternative to service, Guilliman said, is opposition. You align with Xenos factions, Tau perhaps, or remain independent. This results in the Imperium hunting you until you are scrap. We have 1 million worlds worth of resources. You have a handful of warriors. Mathematics determines the outcome. His expression didn't change. I take no pleasure in such calculations. But I am my father's son. I do what must be done. And neutrality? Optimus asked quietly. Impossible, Guilliman replied bluntly. The galaxy allows no neutrality. The Imperium is totalitarian by necessity. We cannot permit independent powers within our borders, because independent powers become enemies or chaos corrupted. Neutrality is a fantasy of more civilized ages. We live in the age of ending. Everyone serves or dies. The chamber fell silent except for the distant hum of the flagship's void engines. Optimus felt the weight of 10,000 years of Imperial doctrine, of a civilization that had forgotten how to be anything except a war machine, of a Primarch who saw no other path forward. "You remind me," Guilliman said unexpectedly, "of my brother Vulcan. He too believed in protecting the innocent, in mercy, even in war. He crafted weapons of artistic beauty and defended civilians at cost to tactical efficiency. The Imperium broke him of such sentiment, not through cruelty, but through necessity. The galaxy taught him that compassion is expendable when extinction is the alternative." The Primarch moved to a viewport, staring out at the stars. "I tell you this not as threat, but as warning. If you serve the Imperium, you will be asked to do terrible things. You will burn worlds. You will execute innocents who might be corrupted. You will make choices that haunt your conscience, assuming you possess such a thing." He turned back. "And you will do these things because the alternative is letting chaos, tyrannids, or necrons do worse. Is there no other way?" Optimus's voice carried the desperation of someone seeking hope in hopeless darkness. No possibility of reform, of change, of finding better solutions. Guilliman's laugh was bitter. "I am the Lord Commander of the Imperium. I have authority second only to the Emperor himself. And I cannot reform this empire. It is too vast, too corrupt, too set in its decay. I can only guide it, delay its death, and pray my father awakens before the end." His eyes met Optimus's. "If I, Primarch, gene-forged demigod, master of logistics and warfare, cannot change this empire, what hope do Xenos machines have?" The truth settled like ash. The Imperium was irredeemable. Serving it meant enabling atrocity, but opposing it meant destruction. And neutrality was death by another name. "However," Guilliman continued, his tone shifting, "I offer you something the Imperium rarely grants. Honesty. If you serve, you will be used until you break or die. But your service will save lives that would otherwise be lost. Billions that need defenders, worlds that need hope." He gestured to the hololith showing war across the galaxy. "Your Decepticon enemies have aligned with chaos. I have reports of them fighting alongside the Black Legion, their second-in-command bearing Tzeentch's marks. They will become champions of the Dark Gods, spreading corruption wherever they go. You can oppose them, save Cybertronians from damnation, fight a war that matters." It was manipulation, Optimus knew. Guilliman was offering purpose to make servitude palatable. But the Primarch wasn't wrong. Megatron's alliance with chaos would lead to corruption, and someone needed to stop it. "If we accept," Optimus said carefully, "what are the terms?" "You become sanctioned Xenos auxiliaries under inquisitorial oversight. You deploy where the Imperium commands. You fight who the Imperium designates. You accept Mechanicus augmentations to prevent corruption or rebellion. Nothing invasive, but safeguards." Guilliman's expression was carved from stone. "In return, you receive resources, intelligence, protection from xenophobic elements, and the right to exist. For now." "For now," Ironhide growled. "The Imperium's patience is finite," Guilliman replied. "Prove your worth repeatedly, and you may survive decades. Fail once, and you are terminated. There is no middle ground." He paused. "I will add one personal guarantee. I will not order you deployed in campaigns where victory requires genocide of human populations. You will fight Xenos, heretics, and chaos, threats that deserve no mercy. This is the only concession I can offer." Optimus looked at his team. Bumblebee's optics were dim with resignation. Ratchet's expression was clinical, accepting the logic even as his spark rebelled. Ironhide looked ready for war, but even he understood the mathematics. They were stranded, low on energon, facing a galaxy that wanted them dead. Service was survival. "We accept," Optimus said, his spark feeling heavier than it ever had. Guilliman nodded. "Then welcome to the Imperium's service, Optimus Prime. You are now weapons in the Emperor's arsenal." He approached, extending his massive gauntlet. Fight well, die with honor, and pray the Emperor acknowledges your sacrifice when your end comes. The handshake was a pact sealed in pragmatism rather than trust. Optimus had made deals with questionable allies before, but never with an empire whose very existence was built on atrocity. Yet what choice remained? As the Autobots were escorted to their new quarters aboard the Macragge's Honor, Inquisitor Covenant approached Guilliman. "My lord, do you truly believe they can be trusted?" "No," Guilliman replied quietly, "but I believe they can be useful, and usefulness is all that matters now." He stared at the hololith showing chaos incursions, Tyranid advances, and the galaxy burning. "I have 10,000 Primaris chapters, billions of guard, millions of worlds, and it is not enough. If Xenos machines can buy us time, then I will use them, just as I use everything and everyone in this rotting empire." His words went unheard by the Autobots, but they would have recognized the tone. It was the sound of someone who had compromised everything for survival and wondered if anything remained worth saving. On the dark Mechanicum fortress, Starscream watched through warped scrying and laughed. Prime has sold himself to fascists. The great champion of freedom, now a slave to the corpse emperor. Oh, this is delicious. Megatron said nothing. He watched Optimus Prime accept servitude and saw his ancient enemy's spark dim with each compromise. The Autobot leader was breaking, slowly but inevitably, and when he finally shattered, the galaxy would have two corrupted factions of Transformers, and chaos would claim them all. The Energon crisis came to a head 3 months into the Autobots' Imperial service, and it nearly killed them all. Ratchet's increasingly desperate reports had painted the picture clearly. Their Cybertronian Energon reserves were at 4%. The Prometheum plasma substitute functioned at 50% efficiency and was slowly degrading their internal systems. Without access to their home universe's resources, the Autobots faced a choice between starvation or accepting permanent modification. The Mechanicus offered a solution. Magos Deltrian 7 presented it in the Grand Manufactorum with the excitement of someone unveiling a holy relic. "We have analyzed your energy consumption patterns, blessed machine spirits. We propose hybrid conversion, integration of Imperial power cores with your existing spark-based systems. The modification will allow you to function indefinitely on standard Imperial fuel sources." "At what cost?" Optimus asked, though he already knew the answer. "Minimal invasive alterations to your primary power systems," Deltrian 7 replied, his mechadendrites gesturing at technical readouts. "The spark remains intact, but supplemented. Your transformation abilities preserved, combat capability enhanced by 17% through superior Imperial power distribution." The Magos paused. "The alternative is slow system failure, degradation of cognitive functions, and eventual termination as your energy reserves deplete entirely." Bumblebee's damaged vocoder emitted a questioning tone. Ironhide's weapons cycled through power modes, each draining precious reserves. Ratchet's medical protocols screamed warnings about cellular degradation already occurring. They were dying slowly, and everyone knew it. "Show me the procedure," Optimus said finally. The modification took 3 solar cycles, each Autobot undergoing surgery, while tech priests chanted prayers to the Omnissiah and Mechanicus surgeons, half organic, half machine themselves, carefully integrated Imperial power cores alongside Cybertronian spark chambers. Optimus endured the procedure conscious, watching through internal sensors as foreign technology fused with his core systems. It worked. The hybrid system powered up, Imperial energy flowing alongside spark energy, the two sources achieving synergy that surprised even the Mechanicus. Optimus's power levels stabilized at 95%, his systems purring with efficiency they hadn't achieved since arriving in this universe. But something felt wrong. The Imperial power core hummed with an energy that wasn't entirely mechanical. The Mechanicus claimed their reactors were blessed by the machine god, that prayers and rituals maintained their function. Optimus suspected something else. The power cores contained fragments of warp energy, carefully controlled and ritually sanctified, but present nonetheless. He was running partially on the same energy that corrupted Chaos forces. "This is heresy," Ratchet transmitted privately after his own modification. "We've integrated technology that requires religious maintenance. Our power cores need prayer to function optimally. Do you understand what that means, Prime? We're not just serving the Imperium, we're becoming part of its theology." "We're surviving," Optimus replied, but the words felt hollow. Meanwhile, in Chaos-held territory, the Decepticons faced their own crisis. The Dark Mechanicum's corrupted fuel sources had sustained them for months, but the price became clear when Breakdown's spark began manifesting visible corruption. The paranoid warrior saw enemies everywhere, not paranoia anymore, but Tzeentch's gift of foresight showing him all possible threats simultaneously, driving him to madness as infinite possibilities paralyzed him with fear. Barricade's aggression had escalated beyond tactical sense. He sought combat constantly, his spark singing with Khorne's approval every time he spilled enemy energon. During a raid on an Imperial supply depot, Barricade charged alone into a Space Marine position, laughing maniacally as bolter rounds tore through his armor, only stopping when Soundwave physically dragged him back. And Starscream was barely recognizable. His frame had mutated beyond Cybertronian limits. His wings were half-warp energy now, his claws dripped warp fire, and his optics burned with colors that shouldn't exist. He spoke in riddles and prophecies, his consciousness splitting across multiple timelines. Tzeentch's blessing had made him powerful, but cost him sanity. "We must find alternative fuel sources," Shockwave reported to Megatron with characteristic logic. "Current corruption rate projects 90% Decepticon compromise within 6 months. Probability of maintaining free will, 17%. Megatron stood in the fortress's observation deck. His fusion cannon aimed at nothing, his tactical processors running endlessly. He could feel the warp's influence in his own spark now, a constant whisper promising strength if he would just submit. Khorne's voice offering endless battle and glory. He had resisted, but resistance cost energy he could barely spare. The demon Prince Scarfus manifested beside him, its form semi-solid. "You look troubled, Lord Megatron. Perhaps you begin to see the truth. In this galaxy, purity is death. The uncorrupted starve. The faithful survive. The faithful become slaves," Megatron countered. "Slaves with full bellies," Scarfus purred. "Slaves with purpose. Slaves with power. Is that worse than free corpses?" The demon gestured to Starscream, practicing with warp lightning in the courtyard below. "Your second has ascended. Soon, others will follow. The only question is whether you will lead them into enlightenment or watch as they evolve beyond your command." It was happening already. Several Decepticons had begun making offerings to the Chaos Gods, crude at first, but growing in dedication. Some painted their frames with chaos symbols, others whispered prayers before battle, and when they did, their power increased. Undeniably, measurably, corruption worked. There must be a way to access warp energy without accepting the gods, Megatron said, more to himself than the daemon. "There is," Scarfus replied surprisingly. "Chaos undivided, service to all 4 gods equally, balancing their influences, preventing any single deity from claiming your spark entirely. Many Chaos champions walk this path. It grants power while maintaining most of your autonomy." The demon's smile was predatory. Of course, it requires acknowledging the gods' existence, accepting their marks, and fighting in their name, but you would not serve. You would partner, a conqueror in alliance with conquest itself. Before Megatron could respond, alerts screamed across the fortress. Sound waves monotone cut through the vox. Alert! Imperial fleet detected entering system. Composition: 3 Space Marine strike cruisers, Inquisition black ship, Mechanicus Arc Mechanicus. Assessment: hunting party. Target: Decepticon forces. And so it begins. Scaphus laughed. The Imperium sends its best to destroy you. What will you do, Lord Megatron? Face them with depleting power and corrupted warriors? Or accept the blessings that could make you their equal? Megatron's tactical displays showed the incoming fleet's capabilities. The Space Marines were Ultramarines, Guilliman's own sons. The Inquisition ship carried Covenant's signature, and leading them in a vessel retrofitted with hybrid Cybertronian Imperial technology were the Autobots. Optimus Prime was coming, and he brought the Imperium's wrath with him. All Decepticons, combat readiness, Megatron commanded. We face our ancient enemies empowered by an empire of 1,000,000 worlds. Prepare for battle. In the fortress armory, Starscream's corrupted voice whispered, "This is perfect. Prime has sold himself to tyrants, and we have gods on our side. When we meet, I will show him what true power looks like. I will show him what he could have been." The 2 Transformer factions accelerated toward collision, one modified by Imperial technology and theological doctrine, the other corrupted by chaos and warp energy. Neither faction was what they had been. Neither would emerge from the coming battle unchanged. And across the sector, a third force stirred. Ancient sensor arrays buried in dead worlds detected the energy signatures of both Cybertronian and warp-based technology. In tombs older than humanity's evolution, Necron dynasties awakened from 60 million year slumber. Their protocols were clear. Unknown technology detected. Unknown life forms designated. Primary directive: investigate and terminate. The Necrons, soulless machine warriors who had ruled the galaxy when the Old Ones still lived, were coming. And they regarded both Autobots and Decepticons as inferior constructs to be studied, then destroyed. The battle of 2 wars was about to become something far worse, a convergence of galactic powers, each convinced of their righteous cause, each wielding apocalyptic weaponry, and none willing to retreat. Optimus Prime stood on the Macragge's honors observation deck, his new Imperial power core humming efficiently, his weapons systems enhanced by Mechanicus modifications. He looked at the chaos-held world ahead and knew Megatron waited there, corrupted and desperate. For the Emperor, Inquisitor Covenant's voice echoed through the vox. For humanity, purge the Xenos, burn the heretic, destroy the Decepticon threat utterly. Optimus said nothing. He simply charged his ion blaster, his spark feeling heavier with each passing moment. He was about to attack his ancient enemy who had allied with galaxy-devouring evil. There was no moral ambiguity here, no question of right or wrong. So why did his spark feel like he was making a terrible mistake? "Prime," Bumblebee's vocoder crackled beside him. "Are we still the good guys?" The question hung in the void between stars, unanswered and unanswerable. And as the Imperial fleet translated from warp space into real space, weapons hot and prayers screaming from 10,000 throats, Optimus Prime led the Autobots into battle for the Imperium. Because in the grim darkness of the far future, there were no good guys. There were only survivors, slaves, and the damned. The Battle of Orpheus Secundus began with Necron warriors phasing into existence across the battlefield, and every faction's tactical computers registered the same horrified conclusion: third-party intervention, threat level, extinction. The Necrons materialized from nothing, their reanimation protocols dragging skeletal metal warriors from quantum pocket dimensions directly onto the Dark Mechanicum fortress's walls. They moved with inhuman precision, their Gauss flares firing emerald energy beams that unraveled matter at the molecular level. A chaos, Space Marine's ceramite armor simply ceased to exist where the beam touched, followed by the flesh beneath, leaving nothing but scattered atoms. Necrons, Magos Deltrian 7's voice screamed through the Imperial Vox network. Ancient Xenos awakening, all forces. Extreme prejudice authorized. Optimus Prime's tactical processors identified them immediately through Imperial data cores. The Necrons were the galaxy's former rulers, 60 million years dead but deathless, their consciousness transferred into immortal metal bodies. They felt no pain, no fear, no mercy. They simply deleted all lesser life forms with mechanical efficiency, and they were everywhere. The three-way battle transformed into four-way apocalypse in seconds. The Imperial fleet's lance strikes hammered the Dark Mechanicum fortress, trying to destroy the Decepticons before the Necrons could overwhelm everyone. Chaos forces on the ground fought desperately against Necron warriors phasing through their defenses. And caught between all of them, the Transformers' ancient war became irrelevant as survival demanded new alliances. Decepticons, fall back to the fortress's energy core. Megatron commanded, his fusion cannon vaporizing Necron warriors that reformed moments later through regeneration protocols. Soundwave, identify their command structure. We need to eliminate their leadership. Alert, Necron Overlord detected. Fortress Northwest Quadrant. Soundwave reported. Warning, Overlord protected by Lich Guard elite units. Assessment, extreme threat. Starscream's corrupted form dove from the sky, warp lightning crackling between his claws as he engaged Necron destroyers, floating warriors armed with heavy weapons. "The Architect shows me their weaknesses," he screamed, his madness somehow granting tactical insight. "Target their power cores, disrupt their resurrection matrices." On the Imperial side, Inquisitor Covenant coordinated a planetary assault with the cold efficiency of someone who had ordered billions dead. Space Marine forces engaged the Necron ground troops. Autobots, you will infiltrate the fortress and locate the Decepticons. Kill them before the Necrons do. We cannot allow Xenos technology to fall into ancient hands. Optimus transformed, leading his team through the hellscape as emerald Gauss beams crisscrossed overhead, and warp-corrupted artillery exchanged fire with Imperial bombardment. The fortress was a maze of Gothic architecture corrupted by chaos, now further complicated by Necron teleportation nodes appearing randomly throughout. "This is madness," Ratchet transmitted as he barely dodged a Gauss beam that atomized the wall behind him. "We're fighting three factions simultaneously in a fortress that violates known physics." "We find Megatron," Optimus replied grimly. "We end this before the Necrons end everything." They found each other in the fortress's central reactor chamber, where massive power generators fed both Chaos sorcery and Dark Mechanicum technology. Megatron stood with his remaining forces, Soundwave, Shockwave, Barricade, barely recognizable under Khorne's corruption, and a dozen lesser Decepticons showing various stages of Chaos taint. Starscream hovered above, his mutations allowing flight through warp energy, and between them, a Necron Overlord phased into existence, flanked by Lich Guard bearing war scythes that could phase through armor and split atoms. The Overlord's optics glowed with cold intelligence that predated humanity's evolution. When it spoke, its voice was a dusty whisper processed through systems older than civilization. Anomalous technology detected. Cybertronian designation confirmed through historical data matrices. Classification: unauthorized post-war in heaven constructs. Directive: terminate and catalog for Triarch archives. "Great," Ironhide growled, his cannons targeting both Necrons and Decepticons. "The universe's oldest machines want us dead too." The Overlord's analysis continued. Imperium of man, acceptable vermin, permitted limited existence under Necron dominion. Chaos, corruption, unacceptable reality warping, scheduled for deletion. Cybertronians, interesting anomaly requiring study through destructive testing. Its war scythe activated. Testing begins now. What followed was the most chaotic battle the Transformers had ever experienced. The Necron Overlord attacked with mathematical precision, its Lich Guard moving in perfect coordination to eliminate threats by priority. Megatron's fusion cannon struck the Overlord's center mass, blowing a crater in its metal chest, and the Xenos simply regenerated, its living metal flowing back together. Optimus engaged from another angle, his energon blade clashing with the Overlord's war scythe in a shower of sparks that shouldn't exist. Two technologies from different eras of galactic history meeting in impossible combat. The Overlord's strength was immense, its reflexes superhuman, and its tactical computer calculated counter moves before Optimus made them. "Sir, Prime!" Megatron's voice cut through the battle. "Combined fire, target its head. Necrons can regenerate unless we cause catastrophic system failure." For one moment, ancient enemies fought as allies. Optimus's ion blaster and Megatron's fusion cannon fired simultaneously, their combined energy overwhelming the Overlord's regeneration. The Necron's head exploded and its body collapsed, only to begin phasing out, its consciousness teleporting back to the tomb ship in orbit to be rebuilt. But the Lich Guard remained, and more Necron warriors teleported in constantly. The Autobots and Decepticons found themselves fighting side by side against an enemy that simply would not stay dead. "This is futile," Shockwave's logical voice cut through. "Necron regeneration protocols exceed our ability to cause permanent damage. Recommendation: tactical withdrawal." "Withdrawal to where?" Ratchet demanded, his defensive systems barely keeping him alive. "The fortress is surrounded, Imperial fleet above. Necrons everywhere, chaos, corruption throughout." Then the reactor chamber's walls shattered as something massive forced its way through. A Necron doomsday ark, a flying construct armed with weapons that could crack continents, had breached the fortress interior. Its main cannon charged, emerald energy building to a level that would vaporize everything in the chamber. "All units, fall back," Optimus commanded, but there was nowhere to run. Starscream laughed maniacally. "The architect showed me this moment, the future where we all die together. It's beautiful." His warp-corrupted form blazed with Tzeentch's power. "But he also showed me the other futures. Watch!" The Seeker unleashed warp lightning at the Doomsday Ark, not to damage it, but to corrupt its systems. Chaos energy flooded the Necron construct's command circuits. And for one brief moment, the ancient technology, designed to resist all forms of attack, encountered something it couldn't process: the Immaterium's fundamental illogic. The Doomsday Ark fired, not at the Transformers, but at its own forces. The beam carved through Necron warriors, their atomized remains unable to regenerate from complete molecular dissolution. The tomb ship in orbit detected the malfunction and teleported the corrupted Ark into the void, jettisoning it before chaos spread further. "That's our exit," Optimus shouted. "Everyone, to the teleportarium. The Necrons just opened a path." What followed was a desperate race through fortress corridors, collapsing from orbital bombardment, past Chaos cultists being systematically exterminated by Necron warriors, around corners where Space Marines and Dark Mechanicum forces fought to mutual annihilation. Autobots and Decepticons ran together, ancient enmity forgotten in the face of triple-faction apocalypse. They reached the fortress's Dark Mechanicum teleportarium, a warp-powered transportation system that could shift them across the system, but it was damaged, its capacity limited. "Not everyone can evacuate," Shockwave reported with characteristic bluntness. "Capacity, 60% of current forces." Optimus looked at Megatron. His ancient enemy looked back. Both understood the math. Some would be left behind to face Necron extermination or Imperial execution. "Autobots first," Megatron said unexpectedly. "You haven't embraced chaos. You still have value to the galaxy. He glanced at Starscream's corrupted form, at Barricade frothing with Khorne's rage, at his own slightly warped armor. "We're already damned. Let the pure escape." "No," Optimus replied, his spark making the decision before his logic processors could object. "We evacuate together, alternating Autobot and Decepticon. We all survive, or none do." "Sentimental fool," Megatron growled, but his optics gleamed with something that might have been respect. "Very well. Soundwave, coordinate evacuation." They teleported in waves, each jump draining the damaged system further. Bumblebee and Soundwave's cassettes went first, then Ironhide and Barricade, the latter snarling about abandoning glorious battle. Ratchet and Shockwave. As the system degraded, the remaining forces faced the choice. Who goes last? Optimus and Megatron locked optics. Without discussion, both stepped back, allowing Starscream and the last Autobots through. "Prime," Starscream's corrupted voice was unexpectedly lucid. "You're an idiot, a beautiful, noble idiot. Tzeentch showed me all your possible deaths. This one is particularly pointless." "Then change the future," Optimus replied. "Use whatever power your God gave you for something other than ambition." The Seeker's 9-rayed eye symbol pulsed. "I hate you for making me care." He reached out with warp power, stabilizing the teleportarium for one more jump. "Go, both of you. I'll hold them." "Starscream," Megatron began. "I'm already corrupted beyond recovery," the Seeker shouted. "My spark is more warp than Cybertronian, but I can still choose who I die for." He turned to face the approaching Necron swarm, his frame blazing with Tzeentch's power. "Go! Now!" The last teleportation activated. Optimus and Megatron materialized on a Decepticon vessel in high orbit, its engines already burning for warp jump. Behind them, through the system's sensors, they watched Orpheus Secundus die. Starscream stood alone in the teleportarium, warp lightning dancing across his corrupted frame, holding off Necron warriors through sheer force of Chaos' blessed will. The Imperial fleet's bombardment intensified. The Necron tomb ship's main weapon charged. And Starscream, ambitious fool that he was, laughed in the face of it all. "I am Starscream," he screamed at the uncaring void. "I am blessed by the Architect. I am more than Megatron ever was. I am—" The planet cracked. The Imperial fleet's cyclonic torpedoes and the Necron doomsday weapon fired simultaneously. Orpheus Secundus, all 20 billion souls and uncountable combatants, ceased to exist. The shockwave scattered debris across the system. In the damaged Decepticon vessel, Megatron stood silent, his fusion cannon powered down. He had lost his second-in-command, his base, half his forces. But he lived, and Optimus Prime stood beside him, equally damaged, equally diminished. "We should be fighting?" Megatron said quietly. "Yes," Optimus replied. "The galaxy demands it." "Yes, but today we survive," Optimus finished. "Tomorrow the war resumes. Because in this nightmare future, that's all anyone does." The Decepticon vessel and the Autobot shuttle translated into the warp, jumping to different sectors, fleeing different directions. Their ancient war would continue. Their ideological conflict remained unresolved. But they had fought side by side against horrors that dwarfed their rivalry, and both leaders knew the terrible truth. The Transformers had changed. The Autobots were Imperial weapons, their sparks bound to prayer-maintained power cores and theological doctrine. The Decepticons were chaos-touched, their forces corrupted by warp energy and divine whispers. Neither faction was what they had been. The Transformers' war had come to Warhammer 40K, and in the grim darkness of the far future, everyone was diminished by survival. The Transformers scattered across the galaxy that knew only war, no longer conquerors or liberators, but survivors in a nightmare that respected neither ideal nor ambition. The Autobots integrated deeper into Imperial service, their sparks bound to prayer-dependent technology, their conscience weathering under the weight of necessary evils. Optimus Prime led campaigns across a dozen sectors, each victory bought with compromises that eroded what he'd once been. When he stood in the Hall of Heroes on Macraga and saw his name inscribed alongside Ultramarines who had served for centuries, he wondered if recognition was worth the cost of his ideals. The Decepticons retreated into chaos-held territories, their corruption accelerating as warp energy sustained them. Megatron maintained iron control over his forces, but he felt the whispers growing stronger. Khorne promising victory eternal, Tzeentch offering schemes within schemes. He resisted, but resistance cost energy and will that depleted with every battle. Some nights, in the isolation of command, he wondered if damnation was simply the price of survival in this galaxy. Starscream was declared lost, another casualty in an empire that measured death in billions. But those who walked the warp's edges sometimes saw a figure wreathed in 9-colored lightning, laughing at futures that might never come. The Seeker had transcended, ascending or falling so far that the distinction no longer mattered. Tzeentch had his champion, and the architect of fate's games grew ever more complex, and across the galaxy, the true powers watched with interest. The Emperor's consciousness, such as it remained upon the Golden Throne, noted the Xenos machine serving his Imperium. The 4 gods of chaos wagered on how long the Decepticons would resist corruption. The Necron's Silent King added Cybertronian technology to his catalog of threats requiring extermination. The Tyrannid hive mind calculated how much biomass could be extracted from these metal constructs. The Transformers had entered Warhammer 40K seeking only to survive. They had succeeded, but in the grim darkness of the far future, survival was indistinguishable from damnation. Service was slavery wearing nobility's mask, and the only victory was fighting one more day in a war that would never end. Thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe.